Well, one of the, just a heads up so you know what's coming. You never know what's coming, even if I warn you what's coming, but you never know. I like when I work with the younger kids and substitute with them, because when you'd say, put on your thinking cap, they would pantomime putting on their thinking cap.
Yeah.
So, along the way, towards the end of the sermon, there will be a time when you will have to put on your thinking caps, because there is going to be a quiz. No credit. Everybody should pass, but it's coming along. Well, you've heard that expression, three's a crowd. Little Jenny, age 6, proudly told her mother that Billy Brown had kissed her after class. And her mother asked, well, how did that happen? And little Jenny said, well, it wasn't easy, but 3 girls helped me catch it. Well, in today's passage that we're looking at from the Bible, there was more than 3 here, but it was a crowd. And the crowd was having an argument. And we know from experience that accidents, fires, and arguments all draw a crowd. So today everybody takes out their cell phone and they're videotaping it. So we begin in Mark's Gospel, chapter 9, verse 14. When they came to the disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the scribes disputing with them. Well, verse 14 picks up after the transfiguration up on the mountain, and Jesus, Peter, James, and John were up on the mountain, and they came down, and when they came down, there was a crowd, and the other disciples were in the middle of an argument. Now, the Bible tells us that wherever Jesus went, crowds followed. But it was not supposed to be like this. Jesus was looking for calm and quietness. And so Jesus and the 3 disciples return, and here they are in the middle of a large crowd. And in the middle is the scribes and the disciples, the teachers of the law, and they are disputing, or they're arguing. It was probably a knockdown, drag-out argument. And Jesus walks into this mess. And the people see Jesus is down from the mountain, and in verse 15, it says, all of a sudden, when the crowd saw him, they were amazed and ran to greet him. They were amazed. For some reason, the crowd was not expecting Jesus to be there. One reason could be because he generally did not get into these types of arguments. Another reason could be is they were so busy arguing and fighting that they did not see Jesus approach. And they looked up, and there he was, listening. And in verse 16, Jesus asked them, what are you arguing with them about? But they say nothing. Verses 17 and 18. Out of the crowd, one man answered, Teacher, I brought my son to you. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they couldn't. It's the boy's father. He doesn't want any argument. He doesn't want to be in the middle of all that's going on. All he wants is a solution to the problem with his boy. He brings his son to Jesus so that the spirit might be driven out. See, verse 18 in the last part, 18b, sums it up. So I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they couldn't. Verse 18 says, whenever it seizes him, the spirit, it throws him down, and he foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they couldn't. Now, if you are a medically trained person, or even if you're not, many would say, just from reading this one verse, that it's obvious this boy has a seizure disorder. And that's why they couldn't drive out the demon, because you can't drive out something, a spirit, that doesn't exist. And since they didn't have medicine back then, well, no wonder the problems continued. Why not just say it's a spirit? But see, that kind of thinking is a lie straight from the devil. Because it assumes a black and white world with no spiritual aspect. Now, the Bible accepts a black and white world, but it also includes a spiritual world as well. And we know that an evil spirit was involved because verses 20, 25, and 26 tell us that it was a spirit causing these problems. And so Jesus addresses the crowd in verse 19. But verse 19, even though he's addressing the crowd there, is very important for us in today's world as well. Verse 19, he replied to them, you unbelieving generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring him to me. There were unbelievers back then. There are unbelievers now. There will always be unbelievers. I think some people, even when they're standing in front of Jesus right before the judgment, will say that you don't exist. So just as it was then, we are living in an unbelieving generation. And it sounds like Jesus is tired and frustrated here. Time is short because the disciples have much to learn. And Jesus is wondering, will they ever figure it out? I'm sure he wonders about me and other people. Will we ever figure it out? Well, we know that they do somewhat later on in the Bible. And so Jesus fixes the situation. He says, bring him or bring the boy to me. See, we always have a place with Jesus. Jesus still asks people to come to him. And he still does miracles. But unbelieving limits what can be done. And in verse 20 it tells us what happened. So they brought him to him, Jesus. And when the spirit saw him, Jesus, it immediately convulsed the boy. He fell to the ground, rolling around, foaming at the mouth. See, verse 21 says there was a problem and the disciples had trouble dealing with it. And Jesus calmly asked, well, how long has this been going on? And the boy's father says, since he was a little boy. And in verse 22, he adds a little more detail. This is what distinguishes it from a medical problem to a spiritual, evil spirit problem. And many times it has thrown him into the fire or water to destroy him. If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. See, this demon, this evil spirit, was destroying this boy's life. Not only was the seizures bad enough, but he would deliberately try to harm him by throwing him into fire or water. Have you ever met someone, or do you know someone being controlled by drugs? So that's one of the modern ways that the devil destroys lives. Week after week, they begin to go downhill. And you can see them destroying their lives. It's their sinful human nature destroying, controlling their addiction. But it all stems from Satan and his goal to destroy God's creation. The highest point of God's creation, which is us. And we see it here in the pages of the Bible, and we see it in our modern day lives. And Jesus is the solution to the problems that you face. Now, after seeing everything that happened with the 9 disciples, the man had doubts that Jesus could help him. And instead of talking with the demon and the boy, or asking questions of him, Jesus talks with the Father. And he has a demand of him. He says, if you want to see this miracle, you must have faith or belief. And the boy's father immediately realizes his mistake. And in verse 24, he answers Jesus, crying out, I do believe, help my unbelief. It's a very honest and heartfelt prayer. It's also very short. If you make a mistake, or if you have doubts about miracles, or if you need a miracle, ask for Jesus' help. Ask that your unbelief be removed. I'm sure if I asked everyone here to raise their hand today, if you've experienced unbelief, that everybody's hands would be raised. And in verse 25, when Jesus saw the crowd was rapidly coming together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you mute and deaf spirit, I command you, you come out of him and never enter him again. The crowd is coming, they're running to see Jesus, a miracle is performed. See, Jesus was there for a time of teaching and privacy. Jesus wanted to avoid further publicity. So he moves to help the boy, and he commands the evil spirit to come out of him. And the easy-to-read commentary on Mark says that Jesus ordered the evil spirit to come out of the boy. This is the same words that Jesus used in Mark when he ordered the demon out of the man at the synagogue. When Jesus rebuked the wind, and when Jesus strongly admonished the evil spirits to keep silent about his identity as the Son of God. And Jesus' command to this evil spirit was very direct and final. The spirit was to leave him and never enter him again. Now that's a permanent solution to a problem. And in verse 26 it tells us what happened. Then it came out of him, shrieking and convulsing him violently. The boy became like a corpse, so that many said, he's dead. Everybody thought the boy was now dead. But Jesus takes him by the hand and lifts him up. And Jesus is willing to do the same thing for us. Take us by the hand and lift us up at our lowest point. See, here again we see Jesus discussing the faith issue. One thing we learn that everything is possible for him who believes. Have you ever been there desperate to believe, but yet afraid? See, doubt will stop you from doing many things. It will stop you from trying many things. It may even stop you from reaching out to the one who can help you. We're susceptible to doubt. See, there's still much mystery about God. There's things that we don't know, things that we don't always understand. And the devil will use that. And if we doubt, if we fail to have faith, we can and do miss the great things of God. The good news is God doesn't say that you have to have great faith. He just wants us to have faith, a little faith, to act like we have it. And God will do the rest. We may have to cry out every day or every minute, I do believe, help my unbelief. And God will answer that prayer each and every time. Have a little faith and it will grow into a great faith. Did you know that you too could be a professional that works in government or other places that require professionals? Just take this short quiz and we'll see how you do. And the quiz consists of 4 questions that tell whether or not you are qualified to be a professional. And there's no need to cheat. The questions are not that difficult. You just need to think like a professional or a government official. So here's the first question. How do you put a giraffe into a refrigerator? Answers?
pieces, time.
Pieces at a time? In pieces. Okay. The correct answer is you open the door, put the giraffe in, and close the door. Told you this is an easy quiz. Okay, question number 2. How do you put an elephant into the refrigerator?
I don't know.
Okay. Answers? Same way? Nope, incorrect. You open the door, you take out the giraffe, and you put the elephant in it and close the door. Okay. This question tests your farsightedness. Number 3. The Lion King is hosting an animal conference. All of the animals attend except for one. Which animal does not attend? Very good. The elephant is correct because the elephant is in the refrigerator. See, that tests if you're capable of comprehensive thinking. Okay, if you didn't get the answers to the last 3, this one may be your last chance to test your qualifications to be a professional or a government worker. There is a river filled with crocodiles. How do you cross it? Okay, how do you cross a river filled with crocodiles? With a boat. Okay, that's a good answer. Carefully, that's a good answer. The correct answer is you simply swim through it. All the crocodiles are attending the animal conference. Okay, these questions test your reasoning ability so that if you answered 4 out of 4 questions correctly, you are a true professional. Wealth and success await you. If you answered 3 out of the 4, you have some catching up to do, but there's still hope for you. If you answered 2 out of the 4, consider a career as a hamburger flipper and a fast food flipper. If you answered 1 out of 4, try selling some of your organs. It's the only way you'll ever make money. If you answered none correctly, consider a career that does not require any higher mental functions such as law or politics or government bureaucrat. Sometimes the answer seems obvious. Sometimes the solution is right there in front of us. But getting a proper solution requires the right way of thinking. God's way is not the way the world does things. Having a little understanding of some of the things of God helps us to have faith also. So how do we increase our faith? Well, verses 28 and 29 tell us. After he went into a house, the disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" And Jesus told them, this kind can only come out by nothing but prayer and fasting. See, the disciples failed and they wanted to know, why did we fail? I mean, they've been watching Jesus, they've been following him, they've been walking with him. And they thought they had the solution. And sometimes we fail in the things that we attempt as well. Remember how all of this started? They were too busy arguing with the scribes. They were too busy arguing with themselves and others. And nobody took time to pray. And the key is not in saying a prayer or having the right words to say to God or faith emergencies. It comes from a regular and continuous relationship with Jesus through prayer. Jesus didn't have to pray words to remove the demon. He was already, quote unquote, prayed up, because he prayed in the morning, he prayed in the evening. And he was in communication with his Father. That might be one of the reasons why the modern church lacks power. We don't pray enough. We also don't focus on God, and we don't remain in constant contact with him. The distractions of the world often come between us and God. And this passage is an example of what happens when we and the disciples neglect prayer. See, it's a life of prayer and living in faith that can overcome evil of the world. And it can overcome the evil around us. It's only through complete dependence on God that we can overcome the world. It is God's gift of faith and grace that helps us to live the fullest Christian life. We never outgrow our need for faith. We never outgrow our need for prayer. And we never outgrow our need for Jesus. So let us pray each day for God to give us the wisdom and the faith to overcome our unbelief. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 113. Would you please stand? Number 113, The Old Rugged Cross.